Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Matt Reichenthal. I'm an employee engagement expert. I help companies and managers influence, inspire, and keep their people motivated at work. I hope you're having a great Memorial Day weekend here. I'm here with my dad, Marty Reichenthal, and I want to thank him for doing this interview. Thank you very much. And the reason why I wanted to do this is, I wanted to provide and share some content to you guys that I feel would be, valuable in your lives, in your world. My dad here has got, years and years of experience, not only managing people, motivating people, building businesses. So, again, I wanted to thank you for being here and sharing some information. I think your story is really worth, hearing. And so I just wanted to kind of start off, back in the early stages of your career, even in your earlier 20s, what got you kind of inspired and driven to do more than the average person, is doing today?
Yeah, Matt, I think like most people, I came from a good middle class background. I don't have any sad stories or anything to tell or anything like that. But we all kind of inspired to do at least as well for our kids as our parents did, even a little bit better. So I just always had that desire to, have a nice life. And I got out of college and I found out it just wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And I kind of bounced around a little bit. But I kind of gravitated towards the restaurant business. In high school, actually, my first job was with a company called Carvel. I actually worked at the original Carvel, Tom Carvel, the founder.
Oh, very nice.
That was his original location. We ate a lot of ice cream back then, had a good time. I still remember Mrs. Brewster came in every Tuesday for a chocolate ice cream soda, extra sweet. But anyway, you
Small things that you remember is funny.
You get to know some of the customers along the way. That kind of started my journey, and so I just always seemed to be able to find work in that restaurant business in college, in the food service, waiting tables and things like that. So I don't know if it picked me or if I picked it or whatever, but it just kept showing up in my life as a way to make a living. But I didn't know that I could build a life in the restaurant business. That was
Right.
a kind of a question. Always my family said, you can be able to actually make a living. It's good right now. But that's kind of how it has started, just right through high school and through college and beyond.
Well, I mean, the fact that it's tough, a lot of people, the restaurant business is just kind of passing through to something bigger. And I'm sure you had people saying, you couldn't make a career out of it.
Right.
What kept you motivated, kept you driven to keep at it, and things, especially when things were, probably tough at some times.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So when I moved to Houston back in 1975, I, said, well, if I'm going to do this, I've got to get into a type of career position. And Wendy's was a brand new company at the time. They were hiring. They had a management trainee. I remember starting salary, I think was $8,600 a year back then. And I applied and I got hired by a gentleman named Rick Postal. Rick was one of my early mentors in management, taught me so much discipline, helped me kind of grow up in that short time we worked together. And it's amazing, you just don't know, but we're still good friends today.
Right.
We
Right.
talk on a regular basis. So sometimes I think the people that I saw that were leaders in the business, I got to meet Dave Thomas, and when he came to Houston to speak, just let me see a much bigger picture than I had seen before.
I see. And what would you say is some of the, you mentioned briefly Rick Postal, what are some things you learned from them, that kind of helped you in your career path?
Yeah, well, Rick taught me fundamentals, being organized. He taught me that a great manager gets work done in the allotted amount of time. That was a big lesson that I learned early on, because this is a business that never ends, and you have to know what's important and to be able to get that work done. And he also taught me about standards. It's either clean and a good repair or it's not.
Right,
Ticket
exactly.
times, you're hitting your ticket times and your standards, you're hitting your labor budgets and things like that. But he did it in a way that even when things weren't going right, he made you feel good as a person. But you still knew you kind of felt bad if you kind of let them down that you didn't perform the way you were
Right.
supposed to.
Well, that's an
Yeah.
interesting way of managing, you know.
Yeah.
So that after a while, you eventually, obviously, you know, got connected with Carrabbas. Tell me a little bit about that, you know, as you were, you know, trying to find a different career path or advance your career path. How did that go?
Yeah. Well, I worked for some other Houston companies after Wendy's, great organization. You know, back in the '70s was NEFA's organization. Worked there for a little while in another Houston company, and I kind of was at the point where I said, you know, it's time to do something on my own, and you know, I said, yeah, if I could just start to save up some money and just open up a small, you know, sandwich shop, something like that. I just start to really work for myself and see if I can do it. And what happened was a friend of mine was working at the original Carrabbas, and he called me and he said, hey, you ought to come over here. You know, we're making great money. It's a really great restaurant. And I said, you know what, man, that might be good for me right now while I'm trying to help me save up some money. So I went there only thinking I was going to be there for a temporary position. But then I couldn't even get hired.
Right.
I think I had an interview with Johnny Carrabba about 6 times until he gave me a job. In fact, the last time I went there, I said to myself, if I don't get hired today, I'm like...
Well, that's
coming back.
a lesson of persistence there,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, you had a successful run here in Houston with the original Carrabbas and the one on Voss, you know, managing that one eventually. Tell me a little bit about the next step when you know, Outback came in with Carrabbas and you went to Florida. Tell me how you got involved with that and how that you went through.
Yeah. Well, really, it's a little more than that, Matt. So I went to work at Carrabba's. I actually started as a server, and after a short time, you know, the restaurant was very popular. It was very busy, and Johnny needs some help. And he was a small entrepreneur, small business, and you know he finally got to the point where he needed some help. And so I started to kind of help him, and then eventually he said, "Hey, would you consider being manager for me?" So I did that. We worked together 3 years at the original location. We had a great time working together, growing sales. Really got to know the family and love the family. And then 3 years into it, he asked me to go to the second location, which was on Woodway, where we had great success. And in that first year, we increased sales just $1 million in that 1 year. Was there for 3 years. And then Johnny got a call from Chris Sullivan, CEO of Outback Corporation, and said, hey, you know, we'd like to come talk to you. We're looking at expanding. Outback was at about 100 restaurants, and they were looking for another concept. And one of Chris's partners, Tim Gannon, was a big fan of Carrabba's and said, hey, this might be the concept that we can grow.
Actually, not to interrupt you, but before you get into that, tell me a little bit about working with Johnny in the early stages. You know, how your relationship was, and you know what you learned from him, or you know, did you guys argue? Did you guys have different thoughts and views about things?
Well, you know, we really became like brothers. I mean, we had the arguments, but I always knew he was the boss.
Right.
We had that. You know, we're both very people oriented, and you know, as the owner though, he had a very strong passion for what he wanted to do, and he also, you know, let's face it, he had the debt. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you know, his family was involved, so a lot of pressure to get things, you know, done, get some of those banknotes paid off and things like that. So, but we really, day to day, we had a great relationship. You know, either he worked the kitchen, I worked the floor. We'd sit down every day, we'd taste food, we evaluate our staff. We were constantly talking about our staff, who's doing well, who needs help, how do we do this. We were always talking about our customers, you know, who's coming in, who's our regulars, who can we do some nice things for, whose birthday, things like that. We just really had talked a lot every single day. And I think, Matt, that's one of the things that's really missing in a lot of organizations is that communication. People kind of pass through shifts and that hour together of really talking about the business every day. And I think that's the most important hour of the day.
Sure. Well, that's a great tip there. So kind of fast forward a little bit. You're alluding to the Outback scenario. So tell us how you got involved with that. You were getting ready to tell us about that, and then about to move to Florida.
Yeah. So Outback, like I said, was about 100 restaurants, and they asked Johnny to partner up and do a joint venture with the expansion. And at that time, I was really the only one besides the family that really knew the whole operation. And so because Outback was based in Tampa, they wanted to open some restaurants there, and they asked me to come and be a joint venture partner there and help develop that west coast of Florida. I like to say it was a big success. Our first location back then was across from the world's busiest Outback, and we were failing. I mean, nobody was coming in the door.
Right.
Right. We had a beautiful restaurant, great location, but it just wasn't happening. And so it was a grind, to be honest. It took a lot of work every day, one customer at a time, getting out in the community, sharing our food, going to special events, going to schools, and just really getting the word out there. But, eventually that restaurant, we were doing in the high 20s, low 30s, about $1.5 million a year. Eventually we got that restaurant over $5 million.
Well, when you first started there, I mean, did you figure out did you knew what you had to do and then it just took a while, or did you kind of learn some things, down the road saying, you know what, we got to change the strategy here, we got to, maybe do certain activities that you weren't thinking about at the beginning
Right.
to get this thing going?
Yeah. So we, Bob Basham, he was one of the founders of Outback, and he was chief operating officer back then. He said, Marty, he goes, you've got great food. He goes, you got to get out in the community. And that's when we started doing the special events. Bringing our food to people, telling our story, what we're all about. Because they didn't know. They thought we were very expensive. They didn't know if we were Spanish or Mexican or things like that. And so that really helped. And we also had a great manager, Bob Gallup, and he had the opportunity to come here to Houston and work with us here. And so he knew that our systems were solid and worked, and he knew people loved the food. He stuck with it through the bad times because he saw people coming back, and they were coming back and bringing their friends.
Right.
And so he knew it was a matter of time. And so, but he knew them. He made sure that he knew everybody in that restaurant.
Right.
In fact, years later, I was out in Tucson, and I met a guy, and he was talking to me about Carrabbas and that managing partner, Bob Gallup, and how he remembered it from years ago.
Right, and that goes back to having the right people in place, and the culture. He knew about the culture. He worked in the restaurant at probably the original
Right.
Laura Boss,
Yep.
and
Both.
really understanding the culture and the people side of things is probably what. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is what made him successful to help get everything kickstarted.
Yeah.
But so. It's a really great story. It was it wasn't easy along the way. I mean, you learned a lot of things down the road, and met a lot of people that influenced you.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to give maybe a couple of tips, a couple of advice about managing people, influencing, motivating, hiring, just a couple things, just a little nugget of a golden nugget there. What would you say?
Well, number one, you have to find people that believe what you believe.
Right.
We all believed in Carrabbas. We love the food. I would get an applicant and I'd cook a bunch of food, and I'd have him or her try all the food, and I'd say, well, what do you think about this food? And they'd go, it's fantastic. And I said, well, we know the food is great. We know we have great systems that could deliver. So the only question really is you.
Right.
Do you have what it takes? Do you have the belief and the desire to take this food, add great hospitality, surround yourself with great people, and build a great restaurant that people are going to love to come to and come back and bring their friends?
Sure.
So finding those people that had that little spark,
Right.
In there, and and they're out there. People are looking. They want to be part of something that they can be proud of.
Right. And and I want to talk about this too. Keeping people there's too many companies that keep people for too long.
Mm-hmm.
You get those what I call the viruses in the company. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, You know, that's a good question. I'm the guy. I tend to hold on. To be honest, sometimes I hold on to people a little too long and give them too many chances. I think it kind of helps me sleep good at night. But in the reality, if I look back over my career, you know, when something's not working for somebody for whatever reason, you know, great person in the wrong position, great person in the wrong company, um, you know, it really is to their betterment because when they stay too long, they get unhappy, they get bitter, you know, you get bitter, and you know, so I really encourage people like when it's your time, you know it's your time and own it and find something that you really could be excited about because life is really, you know, too short to do anything else.
Sure. Well, that's great advice for sure. And any other last thoughts that you have? You know, just wanted to kind of wrap this up, but you know, I hope you guys really find this helpful and insightful in your life and in your business. You know, I really wanted to share, you know, my dad's story. You know, he's been through a lot and done a lot and achieved a lot. So I think it's valuable for you guys to hear a few things from him and hopefully take that to heart and utilize it for what you guys are doing and what you guys are trying to accomplish. So, but if there's any last thing that you'd like to say, and then
Yeah.
we'll wrap it up.
You know, if you're a management, you know, your team, those are your customers, and working with that team of people every day, that's how you are going to take care of all the customers that come in and, you know, pay your salary, pay the salary of your staff, and make your business a possibility. Too often I see people don't spend enough time with their people, talking to their people, knowing who they are, know what they're all about. And so, you know your people, care about your people. You know, I know the original Carrabbas, you know, over half the staff, Johnny can give me the numbers, has been there 15 years or longer. Maybe 30 years, people that I started with 30 years ago are still there. And that's because of the environment, you know. We always say, you know, they don't quit companies. People don't quit companies, they quit people. So, you know, really, you know, you have to work on yourself and your communication and, you know, discipline yourself to spend time with your people, let them know how much you care about them and appreciate them.
That's great advice for sure. And appreciate you for taking a few minutes to talk with everybody. And hope you guys are having a great Memorial Day weekend. And we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.